What is going on, everyone? Tim from Tierphone Orbital. So today is going to be a relatively quick demo video for an install commission that I completed on a Rogue Apprentice and Snips. This is a pair of hilts from Solo's Hold based on Ahsoka's Padawan hilts, right? So I have set both of these hilts up with a removable chassis system. So I would like to come into Fusion and talk about both chassis. I've done this once before for the same chassis, but it's been a little bit since I've gone over them. So I want to talk about the chassis really quickly, and then we will come up top, talk about the install, talk about how to use the hilts, and then we will, of course, put a blade in them and do a quick demo, right? So with all of that out of the way, let's come into Fusion and talk about these chassis. All right, so there are two chassis, obviously, for both of these hilts. Both of them are different sizes. We've got a shoto hilt that is significantly smaller than the main hilt. So I'm going to talk about the main hilt chassis first, right? So for this chassis, I was able to get a regular full-size 18650 battery in it, okay? So we'll start at the bottom. Not pictured in this is a cap that goes over the bottom of the chassis. Once I get my negative battery tab wired up, I can fish my wire up through the back or the spine of the chassis all the way up to the top where the Proffie board is. And once I do that, I can put that cap at the bottom of the chassis, right? Here is our battery tray, obviously. So a little bit of a different setup for both of these chassis, right? Both of these hilts, as with all of Solo's Hold hilts, a lot of them, actually, not all of them. A lot of Solo's Hold's hilts have very different intricacies and setups, right? The pommels in both of these hilts have no sound venting. So the sound vents through the middle of the hilts, essentially. So you've got to, I had to design the chassis with the speakers in the dead center. For this particular one, the main one, the chassis is in the dead center, or the speaker rather is in the dead center of the chassis. The shoto one is at the top of the chassis. Both have very, very strange, out of the ordinary speaker placement, right? And when designing this chassis, you know, typically when we design chassis, the speaker's at the bottom. You don't have to worry about, you know, getting wires past the speaker or anything like that. With this setup, because the speaker is in the middle of the chassis, I had to accommodate for that because I've got to get my battery wires past it. You know, both of my positive and negative terminal wires past the speaker. I've got to get the speaker wires up past it. So luckily a 22 millimeter Nano Elite Speaker from Smuggler's Outpost fit in here, and I could just get my wires past that speaker, right? So that speaker fits in this cavity, okay? And then I bring my wires up past it. And then we've got our Proffie board that kind of sits in here. This is a tilted Proffie board setup. A lot is going on in this chassis. Very, very tight. Because I had to set this up as a removable chassis setup, I really, really had to take advantage of all of the real estate that I could, okay? Some greeley work on both sides of the chassis itself, and then making our way up top. This is a 6-rail PCB. This is from Stardust Sabers, okay? So both chassis have been set up as removable chassis. One of the things that I knew that I wanted to accomplish when I did my first Solo's Hold Rogue Apprentice is I wanted to have removable chassis. I didn't want to set this up as a sled chassis system, right? I feel like we're far beyond, you know, having sled chassis in hilts, and because of the fact that these hilts were designed and released a number of years ago, they were probably designed with that in mind, with a sled chassis in mind, but I didn't want to do that, right? We're far beyond that, right? I've never ever done a sled chassis, right? So it was before my time. Anyhow, so that is the main chassis. Let's bring it over to the shoto chassis. Very, very significantly smaller, okay? Very, very, very tight build on this one. So the majority of the bottom part where the battery is sits in the pommel. Okay, very, very, very tight build. So to the customer, I will include an 18350 battery. This is sized for a very specific, excuse me, 18350 battery. So I will be including that, as well as the 18650 battery for both of these. I will be including that for this particular install. I don't always do that, but because both of these chassis are sized for specific batteries, I will be including them, right? I don't think I mentioned that when we had our discussion about this install. Here is our Proffie board, right? So Proffie board in the middle of the chassis. Very, very strange setup for both of these installs, right? Typically I have my Proffie board at the top of the chassis and my speaker at the bottom. With this one, the battery's at the bottom, Proffie board is in the middle of the chassis, speaker is at the top of the chassis, okay? So here is our, let me get this in frame here. Here is our 22 millimeter Smuggler's Outpost Nano Elite speaker, and same deal, right? I bring my leads up past that speaker all the way up to this 6-rail PCB. Okay, both of these have been printed in PLA, and that's pretty much it. Not too much greebly work. Actually, no greebly work really on this chassis because it is so small. I didn't want to get crazy with the greeblies on this one, right? So just some simple ridges and holes and venting on this one. And that's it, right? So let's come up top. All right, so here they are, the Rogue Apprentice and Snips from Solo's Hold. Very, very well-made hilts, as with most hilts that come from Solo's Hold, right? I wanted to, as I mentioned at the top of the video, one of the things that I wanted to make sure that I did with these hilts was make the chassis removable. I feel like we're far beyond doing sled chassis anymore, right? So one of the things that I had to make sure that I had to accommodate for was having an upper PCB so we could have a removable chassis, but also accommodate for sound venting, right? So there are two very, very small indentation rings here that will allow for your sound venting. So you have to make sure, I had to make sure that I was allowing for that, right? Otherwise, you're not going to have good, adequate sound venting, right? So anyhow, I was happy with how that came out. So let's talk about how to use these guys, right? I'm going to start with the main hilt first. To get at your chassis, you just want to unthread your pommel. So here is the chassis. I just left this matte black. Okay, here, battery tray. Very simple setup, right? I didn't do any kind of painting on this. It's just left matte black. Here is our Nano Elite speaker in here. Proffie board is here. You'll never have to pull this Proffie board out. Easy access to your USB port, and your SD card will just slide out with a pair of tweezers if you ever want to pull that out. And that's it, right? Both are Proffie V3 builds, and there's that 6-rail PCB from Stardust Sabers. Okay, so let me get a battery. Okay, so I did mention that this was a special sized battery for this main chassis. That was a mistake. This is actually just a very, it's a regular 18350 or 18650 rather button top battery. Okay, so the battery that is a special size battery is a flat top 18350. I will be including that one, but this is just a regular button top 18650. Spring side is your negative, so take the flat part of your battery, negative side down.
I am no Jedi.
No kill switch in either of these builds. There was just no room for that. So when you put your battery in, you are the kill switch. It will power up that chassis, okay? All right. So once you get your battery in, you can put your chassis in place. It doesn't matter which orientation you put it in. Just slide it all the way forward. And then you can thread your pommel in place until that stops, okay? All right, so that is the main hilt. Shoto is the same deal, right? Unthread your pommel. I think I might already have a battery in this one. Yeah. So this is that smaller 18350 battery, okay? We'll be including this with the hilt. Very, very small chassis on this guy, okay? But same setup. Here is our Proffie board at a tilted angle with the easy USB access and SD card. So just take your battery. Flat part is your negative down towards that spring.
I am no Jedi.
Okay. Once you get your battery in, you can slide that chassis in place as well. Actually, for the shoto, I take the chassis, I put it in the pommel first, okay? And then I thread the pommel into the hilt. And then you're good to go. Okay. Oops. So let's come down to the bottom. All right, so there's main, shoto, one at a time, Tim. Let's see what else we put on here.
There are ways those who have passed on may still guide or influence the living.
Right, so let's put a blade in it. All right, we're going to try and do both of these at the same time here and not break anything, right? So 1-inch blade holder. There is a set screw around front here that will serve as your blade retention, right? So just rest your blade, full length blade. Let me try not to break anything. So just rest your blade on those PCB pins and then tighten that set screw. I'm going to do this for both. I happen to have a short 1-inch demo blade here. So once you get both of your blades tightened, you are good to go. Let's figure out how we're going to do this. So you are good to go. Yeah, I'm not going to I'm not going to swing both of these around at the same time.
There are ways those who have passed on may still guide or influence the living.
See what else we got on here. Both have the same config on them, both blades.
Ahsoka.
Mostly Ahsoka fonts on them. Okay. And same with the main blade.
A Mandalorian and a Jedi? They'll never see it coming.
One more. All right, so that's it. That is the Rogue Apprentice and Snips from Solo's Hold. Really great iteration of Ahsoka's Padawan hilts. Right, so anyhow, yeah, so it's, it's just interesting doing the chassis designs for both of these because of how the speaker had to vent, right? So anyhow, to the customer, thank you very much for your patience. You caught me just during my summer vacation, so thank you very much for your patience. I will be getting these in the mail after recording this video, so I appreciate that. If anyone has any questions about these hilts or this install, please do not be a stranger. And with that being said, may the force be with you always. Have a good one, everybody.